Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. That's right, I've got a new reverb going on for you. Meet Chamber. Chamber is a follow-on to the feed-forward reverbs that I was doing. As you can hear, it's got some similarities to things like verbity and galactic, except for there's a difference in the way that it's arranged. A couple of differences, actually. These are things that I gave Chamber specifically. You can hear we've got lightness. Bigness is enough to make a very small room or a very large. Longness can cut everything down until it's basically just a kind of slapback echo. Unlike some of the other ones, longness is capable of making absolutely no feedback. It turns it into a complicated slapback. I'll make a clicky noise to show that. And that is the sound of raw chamber. Lightness and darkness have different qualities. Here, let's dial these things back a little bit. So, if you have lightness and darkness at 0, you have the most full range algorithm for this. And we can exaggerate it. And this is kind of like what we have in galactic. Or verbity. And darkness is kind of like what we've got in verbity and so on, with one difference. I've got it set up so that if you are making a trebly noise, like if you swoop darkness back up to bright again, the roll-off, it's a very big chamber. The roll-off that you get is only consistent with what actual air in real space does. This is similar to what I had in the Infinity, I think it was Infinity, or Reverb proper plugin, the ones where I was making a point of having it have the brightness fall away consistent with what actual air does. And I'll demonstrate that now. If you do that, and it's the same thing with smaller chambers. There's a fall away there, which is consistent with what you get from air in a large concrete cistern, which is what I was using to measure it out with. But this extra thing that I've added for chamber has its own special uses, namely lightness. When we use lightness, we can roll off the lows going into the reverb, so it becomes more flexible, used with different kinds of sounds. And this can be very useful on vocal reverbs and things. And of course, with full lightness, if it's down to 0, you're getting bass. But if it's not down to 0. You're not getting bass. And we can go back to music. Observe the behavior. This makes it a lot easier to work with, seeing as you can tailor how much high frequency sounds go into the reverb and how low frequency sounds go into the reverb. So that is a sort of convenience, it's a utility thing. Now here's the question, what is chamber? What makes this sound where we've got this kind of behavior and this kind of peculiar echo behavior going on? Again, I can show you with longness at 0, you're hearing only one instance of the feed-forward algorithm. That is 4 delays, each of them feeding into 4 more delays, each of those feeding into 4 more delays. This is the same as the householder reverb matrix, except for that rather than being a feedback arrangement, it's a feed-forward arrangement. Where do I get the timing for, say, the longest delays? Or the shortest ones, like this? Where you could definitely use this as a kind of slapback that's going to do a nice, clean delay effect, but one that's slightly fuzzed out, one that's slightly more complicated. Then tune it like that, and then also do things like throw in lightness so that it's only emphasizing the right parts of the voice, or if you don't like the way that the S's are doing this, then you can take the S's out using that and get a kind of rockabilly slapback kind of thing. And if that's too fast of a slapback, we've got plenty of room, because this is using the undersampling technique that I invented for Verbity and used in Galactic, and I've also got in Iron Oxide Classic 2. Speaking of that, there's an additional thing going on here where this is not exactly the same algorithm, because as it happens, I found a bug in Galactic and Verbity and Iron Oxide Classic 2. Somebody commented on that in one of the, I think it was either Verbity or Galactic's thread, and they said there's a lot of ultrasonic stuff coming through here when I run this at high sample rates, such as this currently is. What you're hearing is it at 96K. Turns out there was a slight detail in the algorithm that I thought needed to be addressed, and I changed it, and chamber does not produce the ultrasonic weirdness in its output that the other ones did. And here's the deal. Not only is this cleaned up and better for, let me cut down the sound a little bit and give it a little bit of feedback without it being too much, and deepen it a little bit and darken it a little bit and so on and so forth. And yeah, there we go. So playing with vocal reverbs, it's all good fun. But here's the thing, I have fixed that bug. Not only that, but I have fixed the bug in Galactic, which has been very popular. That made its way into the Surge synthesizer. And people are looking upon that with fondness. Well, now I've got a bit of an update for the high sample rate stuff, if they're using it. And Verbity and Iron Oxide Classic 2 have all been updated to handle this algorithm, the not the feed-forward thing, that's a separate thing, but the undersampling where I'm interpolating and running the delay stuff at CD rates so that I can stretch the delay times out for even long sample rates like 192K if you chose to use it. And yeah, if you are hoping to use chamber, which I think would probably be a good idea, I think this might work out pretty well for people. I have a feeling that this is going to be successful. But if you also like Verbity, or if you like Galactic, or if you like Iron Oxide Classic 2, re-download them with, for instance, the big download where you can download a copy of everything. And you'll have a change where nothing was altered except for this bug was fixed, meaning that nothing has happened except for a supersonic kind of extra thing that was in there that wasn't particularly useful has been cleaned up. And it is, of course, for free because I'm supported by Patreon, so this is just the work that I do. And I remember I've been talking about all of this. I've been talking about the way that this particular algorithm goes and the funny behavior that we've got. Where did I come up with this particular arrangement? It's a weird kind of thing. As you can hear, if we have just the direct output of this setup, this is not that even. Like I can make the noise, and you can plainly hear it's an interesting kind of shape, but if we make it much longer, smooth as silk. Just as good as anything that you could have asked for out of the other reverbs. And this is not an infinite reverb. Longness is not going to ultimate longness. It's going to roughly realism in the largest possible concrete cistern that you could ever be in. So it does fall away eventually if you let it, but this is a very long reverb all the same. It's probably long enough for all practical purposes, so you're not going to use it at full longness all the time. And you can plainly hear that when we use this, it fills in those gaps. It fills in the gaps between that funny little sort of slapback echo behavior that seemed very arbitrary. Again, smooth as silk. Where does this come from? You'll never guess. The golden ratio. That's right. That's right. You heard right. This is something that I discovered just last Monday. We were working on trying to do a new arrangement of reverbs, and I had some ideas to try out. And somebody, I forget who, but it would have been one of my regular people who hang out with me on Mondays, suggested the Fibonacci series for delay taps, which sounded kind of weird, like those are not prime numbers or anything. But, you know, why not? So I tried it. And it turned out that it worked surprisingly well. Here, I can dial that back just a hair. It worked surprisingly well, considering that there was no special reason why it should work. And then somebody mentioned that the Fibonacci series for larger and larger numbers, and I kept adding more and more numbers and making it go to longer delay times, tended to converge on the golden ratio. And so I thought, well, why don't we find out what happens? what would happen if you took the delay times and starting with the last set of 4 delays, you started with some kind of big long delay, and then every one stepping back from the very end one was exactly the golden ratio smaller than the previous. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 was the longest you could get, and then 11th is 0.618, etc., smaller than that. And 10 is 0.618, etc., smaller than that. And so on, making up 12 delay lines in sets of 4, all of which are householder matrix organizations, feeding into each other as a feed-forward network. Now, there's no reason that that would work. After all, when you have it raw, you just only get this. It's just a kind of weird delay thing. And there's nothing all that good about that. Like, that's just a sort of arbitrary echo. But here's the thing. When you start feeding that back on itself, even though it does not include prime number sequences specifically, in fact, it doesn't even try to include prime number sequences, it's just golden ratio all the way down. And then the output gets fed into the input, and it starts filling in forever. So I hope you enjoy Chamber. I think it's going to have all kinds of uses, and it's a weird little discovery. Normally, you'd need to have the way that a reverb behaves make a little better sense than that. You normally wouldn't have just every delay time be a ratio of every previous delay time, because if they start adding up on each other, you wind up getting weird honking noises, you get resonances and stuff like that. And this is only the same ratio over and over and over again. In the householder matrix, 3 banks of the householder matrix in a feed-forward configuration with a little feedback on the end, namely longness. And what you get out of it is infinite space, with just enough early reflection funniness to make it so that it acts like it's got a little bit of a rockabilly slapback or something. Just an interesting little characteristic. And then it just all blurs into continuous noise. And I'll say, I mean, it's continuous noise even at completely different sizes. Like, you can have a tiny box, a chamber that's way too small and not especially useful. And you can have it wide open with the bass not restricted at all, the treble not restricted at all, and the duration, longness turned up as far as it will go. This is going to magnify anything nasty in your chamber, anything nasty in your algorithm. And yet, it actually works quite well, even at the smallest size you could possibly have. I mean, technically I could have it be made smaller, but this is definitely kind of a closet or a shoebox. Normally you're going to be in a space a little bigger like this, maybe, or a lot bigger like this. And you'd have a chamber that is maybe like a plausible size, or damp it a little bit. Or just have it be the ultimate size that you could possibly have if you wanted to do the same kind of thing that Galactic does. Because this is what Galactic is for. But I'll tell you one thing, Galactic can't do this very well. Or this. Or this. Nor can it cut the lows out, and cut the highs off in this way, so that you can have a kind of expanded vocal ambience thing going on that will fill in near reflections in a useful kind of way. And again, that is too small, so let's set it to something a little bit bigger and make sure that the longness isn't too great, and that'd pretty much work fairly well. It's not the most realistic reverb that you could possibly get, but it's got that interesting quality where it can be melded and mutated into anything that you want it to do. I think that might actually come out pretty useful. And on that note, I'll take the headphones out, shut the reverb off, and say that I hope you like Chamber and get some good use out of it. This is the kind of thing that I do the Patreon and that I do Airwindows for, is being able to grind away at this stuff and come out with something that is new and useful, that I'll find useful, that other people will find useful. And hey, if the side effect is that I managed to do a bug fix on Galactic and Verbity and Iron Oxide Classic 2, which also inspires me to continue this undersampling thing that I'm doing now that I've got it perfected, that just makes it even nicer. Oh, one more thing. If you would like YouTube to show my videos to more people, well, you know what to do. And on that note, I'll see some of you folks on Monday, where we'll probably be talking about other things that I could bring up to date using the undersampling technique, because there's a bunch of stuff that I have that uses delay buffers, and it would be nice to have like full-length delay buffers at any sample rate. We'll talk about that Monday. Monday's going to be tough. It's been really hot, and it's going to be even hotter on Monday, so we'll see how that works out. But I'll talk to you folks later. I hope you like Chamber. I hope you like Galactic too. That's got an update now. And bye-bye.